Now to hotshots, and US stocks are experiencing significant volatility following President Trump's announcement of tariffs on Canada and Mexico, potentially escalating into a full-blown trade war. The Dow dropping sharply by about 800 points before recovering slightly. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq showing mixed results. Experts warning that the tariffs could trigger a global economic downturn reminiscent of the Great Depression. For more, let's bring in Brad Gastworth, who's in Florida from Unearthing Opportunities. Thanks for standing by. Great to have you on the program. Talk to us about how President Trump's tariffs on Canada and Mexico and China could now impact global markets.
Yeah, Aaron, I think this is just the beginning of more volatility for global markets. Clearly this was rumored for some time. It was talked about after he did win the presidency. When he got into office initially, there was some speculation maybe he wouldn't go as deep. That doesn't turn out to be the case. He is going with pretty high tariffs, and you're seeing these retaliation. Trudeau, as you reported, is coming back and trying to tariff over 100 billion worth of U.S. products. This is not good for anybody. This will not benefit anyone, and ultimately, this is going to lead to higher prices, which will cause more inflation, which will rattle the markets even further. So I'm looking at this as a big yellow caution flag for markets and investors, and we got to see how this sort of plays out.
All right, talk to us about the retaliatory measures taken by China and Canada and Mexico, because they're in a really tricky point. If they retaliate, Trump has said that he will increase tariffs in turn, becomes tit for tat. If they don't retaliate, they look weak.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Aaron. I'm going to see retaliation because I think these companies need to save face. And I think you're going to see China maybe retaliate more. But ultimately, I think you're going to see a little bit of an uptick, maybe even in response to what Canada did to the U.S. So if that's the case, again, this is not good for anybody. We're already starting to get some economic indicators that are turning more negative. GDP here in the U.S. is getting revised lower. PPI prices are going higher, and this will just ultimately cause more price inflation. Again, I don't see this good for anyone. And if we see retaliatory points, I think this is just going to get escalated and get worse for all countries involved. Talk
to us about the stock market volatility and how it could affect consumer confidence and also economic growth, because we remember when he first announced the 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, he backtracked pretty quickly because the markets dropped. They've dropped again about 1,300 points in two sessions for the Dow. Do you think there'll be any response from the White House? I mean, surely President Trump, as we know, very much cares about the stock market.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, Aaron, I think you're going to see Trump try to get involved in one way or another. And maybe it's not necessarily on the tariff side, but maybe he forces an arm on the Fed cuts. Maybe he does something to talk about the Americans. I think he is not going to sit back and let the market just unravel. But ultimately, these tariffs, if they go tit for tat, as we've been talking about, this is really sort of disastrous given sky high valuations. You have jobs that are starting to increase, unemployment's increasing, and you have prices increasing. So we're starting to get, we were in a place where the markets really ignored these macro, trade tariffs in the past. I don't think it's going to ignore it this time around.
What are the potential inflation risks and also supply chain disruptions that you see these tariffs actually causing?
Yeah, I think the automotive market is one for sure. I think agricultural, that's a big issue just for where prices are going on food. But if you look at technology, so many semiconductors and parts are produced overseas. This could have a major impact for the large companies like an Apple, where you have a significant portion of iPhones still being manufactured in China. I think this is something we can't ignore. Prices are going to go higher, and there's two things: either companies eat it and margins go lower, or they pass it on to the end product and prices go higher. I think each way, I sort of see the companies getting hit.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch because, as they say, tariffs is like putting rocks in your own harbour.